You wake up in the desolate depths, 10,000 years before anyone ever thought to draw a line on paper and call it a path. The only thing you have is a stone. Behind you, 3 days back, is the only group of people who know your name. And that's the whole problem. You don't know how to get back to them. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on stories like this. The forest looks the same in every direction. The trees all seem to lean in the same direction, and there are no clear paths. All of this leaves you with a queasy feeling in your stomach. It's not hunger. It's something much worse. Modern search and rescue researchers have given a name to this feeling you're experiencing right now. It's called forest shock. The disorientation experienced even by experienced hikers just minutes after realizing they can't retrace their steps. Studies of the behavior of lost people have shown that when most people truly lose their way, they unconsciously begin to walk in wide circles, believing they're moving in a straight line. But you don't know any of this yet. All you know right now is that the sun has set, and your legs are trembling. Of course, survival comes before everything else. You learn to move silently and master all of nature's laws. But a question keeps surfacing in your mind even if you don't want it to. Which way did we come from? At first, you try to keep everything in your head using your own unique strategy. The bent trees, the oddly shaped rocks, the twists and turns of the stream, you fill your entire mind with these, drawing paths from one landmark to the next. In other words, you're actually drawing a map in your mind. But this doesn't really work. Similar landmarks get mixed up. It turns out that a rock you swore was unique is actually one of 3 identical ones scattered across the same slope. Clearly, your memory isn't designed for this. So you try different things. You drag the sharp edge of a rock across the ground to draw a line. A small, rough hill you just passed by, perfect for leaving a mark. Even a rough sketch works, until it rains. Yes, it rained, and the rain filled all the gullies with water, washing the place clean. You heard that right. But you don't seem to have any intention of giving up on these lines. The next day and the day after that, you try again, making the lines clearer each time. And something strange happens. You show the drawing to someone else in your group. You expect them to nod in agreement. Instead, they squint at it as if you'd given them a stone with no stone inside. The lines mean something to you because you were right there when you drew them. To others, though, it's just a patch of ground covered in scribbles. This is a problem you hadn't realized before. 2 different brains, but a map doesn't work until both can look at the symbols and visualize the same place. That's why you get together with others, not to explain. After all, you don't even share a common language. You're just trying to communicate through gestures and facial expressions. And you begin to agree on shapes. A wavy line always represents flowing water. A triangle always represents something tall enough to be seen from a distance. At first, this process doesn't go so smoothly. It's more like a game of charades played with a stick in the dirt. But little by little, the shapes start to stick in your mind. And eventually, the team understands the shapes without you even having to describe them. Anthropologists studying prehistoric cave settlements have discovered something similar, even if you weren't aware of it. The abstract clusters of dots and lines found on cave walls in France. Some researchers now believe these represent star patterns or travel routes rather than mere decoration. No one is certain, and that tells you something. Even 10,000 years later, we're still squinting at others' earliest attempts to map the world and asking what they mean. Do you think those lines on the cave wall were a real map? Leave a comment. I'm curious. Actually, even if you don't spend too many words on this thought, there's a strange sense of comfort within you. You aren't the first person to crouch on the ground, trying to turn fear into something you can hold on to and point to. You just haven't realized it yet. But the Earth's memory is short. Every drawing is erased by the next rainstorm, the next set of footprints, or the next animal that decides to lie right on top of that little wavy line you drew so carefully. If the main goal is for someone to find their way easily, it must last longer than later one afternoon. That's why the idea of altering the surface comes to mind. You begin carving the same symbols into a flat stone that isn't going anywhere. The stone preserves the lines just as it should. It's also as heavy as you'd expect a piece of rock to be, meaning it can't go anywhere either. The map isn't a map you can carry with you. Before setting out, you look at everything and try to continue on your way by relying solely on your memory, which brings you right back to where you started. In my opinion, this is a frustrating way to make progress. You've solved the problem of the drawing fading away, but in doing so, you've created a new problem that's just as bad, that permanent mark that's not going anywhere. Some evenings you just stare at that piece of rock. On the one hand, you're proud of it, but on the other, you want to throw it into the river. Looking back, it becomes clear that the solution was actually obvious. Stretched and dried animal hide or the flattened bark of certain trees can hold the same carved symbols and be folded small enough to carry. You'll draw your river, your triangular mountain, and the markers indicating good and bad water sources on a piece of hide that's easy to roll up and carry under your arm. For the first time, information about a place can travel with you, rather than being left behind, chained to the very land it describes. But that's not the end of it. Another problem has arisen, a deceptive one. The river curves to the left on the map, but in reality, it's the exact opposite. Is the mountain a day's walk from the river, or 3 days? No matter how accurate your drawings are, they never match the scale of the actual terrain. And a map that gives you the wrong information about distance is worse than no map at all, because it leads you with a false sense of security. So you start counting. You use the steps between landmarks, your stride length, as a rough ruler that requires no agreement among people, because everyone can count their own steps the same way. When the sky is clear, you track your position relative to the sun's path and use this to maintain a consistent orientation from one drawing to the next. This is a primitive method. It is far from precise, yet it marks the moment when the distance on your leather map first establishes a genuine relationship with the distance in the actual landscape. Historians studying early Babylonian clay tablets, some of the oldest known maps dating to around 2300 BCE, point to precisely this leap. The moment a drawing ceased to be purely symbolic and began to represent actual proportions. Once the map began to roughly correspond to reality, maps also began to correspond with one another. You compare your skin drawing with one made by another hunter on a completely different journey, and you realize you can piece them together where two rivers meet, or where two mountains align. One person's territory has become a corner of a much larger picture. Piece by piece, journey by journey, map by map, the empty space around your camp begins to fill in. This is almost exactly the same instinct that later led to the creation of the Peutinger Map. This Roman road map, of which only a medieval copy survives today, stretches out in a network of roads showing routes covering the entire known empire. In Rome, too, no one sat down and drew this overnight. This map emerged from the comparison of notes by thousands of individual travelers, just as you would do with a hunter whose language you barely understand. It had to be that way. You didn't actually invent a tool. You proposed an idea. The idea that space itself, that is, the real physical world around you, could be scaled down, symbolized, and presented to someone else's eyes. Every road sign, every phone screen showing a blue dot moving down the street, every pin placed on a map when you click on a location a friend shared, all of these stem from precisely these places, these challenges. The idea that a single line drawn on the ground by a lost and frightened person could signify the way home, and the act of putting that idea into practice. And so that single line drawn on the ground by the lost person stretched all the way to the blue dot as the years passed. But what's truly striking is that the same stories keep repeating themselves in writing, in numbers, in the way we measure time. The moment humanity transformed the fear of getting lost into a symbol was, in fact, the moment a civilization began. You got lost, and thanks to you, someone will come to realize that relying on those glowing screens can lead to unexpected or unfortunate consequences. If you're wondering how you managed to make a phone out of a stone, I definitely invite you to check out my previous video, because there you accomplished something even more challenging.